Can you see my screen, or it doesn't look like it's sharing?
No, not yet.
All right. All right. Is that working now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for attending today's Fundraising Friday, where we're doing a discussion of hybrid events. This is the part 2 of the presentation that I did last time. So every time on Fundraising Friday, we usually try to do something of relevance as our entree photo. And of course, because, Monday is Halloween, I decided to do the haunted house. But to me, it was also like a little extra because this is actually a picture from an article in the Washington Post about why people actually enjoy scary things, and like the pleasure sensors of our brains interact with scary things in different ways, and that for some people it actually helps them deal with anxiety. I you know and I also think like oh, this is all me, this wasn't in the article, but like I know so many more guy friends who are like into doing like risk taking and scary things than women friends that I have, um or LGBT LGBTQ folks. And I tend to think it's because, like it can be really scary in this country already to be BIPOC or queer or a woman. So maybe we don't need the extra nudge. But I also thought it was funny because hybrid events have, from the first presentation sounded like it was scary for folks. So to me, it was like I giggled when I added this because I felt like um, it was like a double entendre. But here we go. All right, so the typical intro to Progressive Multiplier. This is the team. You will sometimes see my colleagues join us when during presentations, especially if they are the subject matter experts and I'm able to tap them into being part of the presentation. If you ever have questions that you need to reach out to any of them, they are as friendly as they appear in the pictures. So Progressive Multiplier, we are all about helping the progressive movement move people and move money to create democratic change. Most of y'all know this whole spiel, so I'll just keep flowing. We, of course, are a funding intermediary where we provide funding for fundraising experiments. So because we want to sort of upend the way, or maybe disrupt a little the way the philanthropy works, and to let them know that they can invest in fundraising. And if they really want nonprofits to be like strong and stable and financially independent, they should be investing in fundraising activities as well as civic engagement work and all the things that the nonprofit industrial complex is afraid of. So we give grant when, as a funding intermediary, it means that we have to go raise money to then re-grant it. But when we do have those funds to grant, we have these 3 program areas of achieving justice, realizing democracy, and restoring the environment. If you are ever in thinking about trying to get funding from us, we have on our website an LOI on the grant seekers page. Just go ahead and fill it out and let us know that you're interested. And hopefully when funding arises, we'll be able to help you out. But of course, there's more of a process than that. But Fundraising Fridays is brought to you by the Resilience Initiative and the Leaders Trust. Our partnership there is allows us to do these trainings. Of course, we do them twice a month. One where we go deep dive into the content, the other where it's more of a discussion of the content. If you could, and we, especially on the second session of the month, we liked it to be a talkie of everyone else, not just me at you. And one of the ways we try to do that is to have folks please introduce yourself in the chat, say who you are, your pronouns, where you're from, what organization, part of country, whatever you want to share. But please introduce yourself in the chat to get to break the ice a little bit. So the partnership that we have with the Resilience Initiative is not only just Fundraising Friday, but it also allows for one-to-one coaching, where you can sign up for an hour or a block of 5 hours, where I or Bethany, or depend, if we expand the team, whoever else could help you through either a fundraising problem, or if you just want to pick our brains. Some folks use it as sort of like a phone a fundraiser sort of situation, where they get the block of time and they reach out when they have a specific problem, and they'll, spread it out over a long period of time. Others are like, I need, 5 hours because I'm doing my development plan and I want you to do it with me. And we'll just like take blocks of time and noodle through and work it out together. So it can be used in any way that you want. If you are interested in one-to-one coaching, reach out to Michelle Mangle, whose email address is there, who's also sent out the email reminder for today's session. You can find her email there and see if there are still time slots available this year. Our next Fundraising Friday sessions in November is we're going to do a session on reporting, the types of typical reports that we use for boards and or for yourself or for your ED or internally. I would really love to hear from folks about what their needs are. This came directly requested from this group of folks. I know there's fewer of you right now, but this came out of this community of people who were requesting a training on reporting. Help me help you. I need to figure out what folks' needs are so that I can put a presentation together that actually will work for y'all. And then once we have the training together, then we can then share some templates and examples and have a deeper conversation on part 2. And then the December one is going to be all about like, what did we learn this year, and how are we using what we learned this year for next year? All right. So we're diving right into it. So the quick overview of hybrid events, and then we're going to meet our guests. But I guess to start, I would say, let's just sort of get the thinking caps warmed up. If y'all wouldn't mind jumping on your mics and saying what kinds of things or what questions do you currently have, or things you hope to hear today about hybrid events. Jordan, Jen, Asada.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for joining late. My name is Jen. I work at Rise Up. I'm curious, we just had our annual gala, and pre-pandemic, this was an in-person event, but this is the 3rd year now we've had it virtual. And this year we kind of introduced more of a hybrid element with watch parties, which seemed to go pretty well, and is something I think we want to kind of try and build on in the year to come. I guess just joining to hear ideas from other folks and kind of get the gears turning a little bit, thinking about creative ideas to expand on the hybrid element. This is an event that's like pretty important to our leadership council, which is like our advisory board, and they really love kind of the in-person experience, but are also pleased with how things are going virtually. So it's kind of striking that right balance, I think.
Great, thanks. Jordan?
Yes, hi, it's so nice to meet everyone. My name is Jordan, and I'm a development officer with Engender Health. And I started this position somewhat recently, and we've had one virtual event since I started, and the planning was mostly underway by the time I joined, but we have plans for many more in the future, and I just want to learn a little bit more about what other folks are doing and see what maybe we can do better.
Great.
I work with Soulforce, and we mostly deal with marginalized communities that have been deeply affected by COVID. And so we've kind of made the decision going forward that all of our events are going to be hybrid, because we always want to be conscious of the fact that COVID is not gone. And so we want people to be safe. And I am also stepping into this role of planning these events for the first time, starting in December. So I'm just here to learn everything that I can.
Did you say you're with Soulforce? Oh, great. Love them. Well, thanks. That's a good I think overview of what we have that that and an overview of what you're thinking about, and hopefully we're going to touch on all of those things in the conversation. I don't see why we wouldn't, but let me just do the quick run through of so if you didn't get the deck last time, this is a much shorter version. I've taken out a lot of substance, so if you want last time's deck, please feel free to reach out to me and you can have the longer version with much more detail in it. But I'm going to do just a quick overview of hybrid events, and then also don't forget we have the private YouTube channel where the videos from Fundraising Fridays live. And when we're in the discussion, I'll grab that link and drop it in the chat for everyone too. So the quick and the dirty on what do we mean on hybrid events. So first, just defining the terms. What do you mean? Literally both live and virtual things happening at the same time. The benefits is that they allow us to engage a broader audience than we ever could with just live events, and engage people in a different way than we ever could with just virtual events. And which inherently lowers the barrier to entry, which as a fundraiser, to me, it's always important. Like, how do I make my events more accessible? And I think hybrid definitely creates more opportunities there. And like most events, it allows you to do peer-to-peer, but you can even do them differently with a hybrid event model. So there are, of course, considerations that we have to take into account when we do any in-person events. And of course, COVID ain't over, and COVID ain't over, especially for the most vulnerable of us. And we also have to think, so not only when we think about COVID issues, but we also have to think about COVID. Sorry, not only do we have to think about COVID issues for our donors, but we also need to think about COVID concerns as it relates to our own staff. And what, because typically with events, we're asking our staff to participate. Either they have a role to play, or they're to be, at the event so they can talk about their programs and the work that they're doing, and just chitty chat up with other folks. What are their safety concerns? So it's important to have conversations in advance with your team, and as well as thinking about like the age and the health of your people. Groups that work on health issues, HIV/AIDS, or cancer groups, or groups where having a whole bunch of people together with the population people that they serve is actually an incredibly scary prospect. But if they want to do that, what are the things that they need to do to make it as comfortable and safe as possible? And also, what do you need to do so that the folks who are like, I'm not going to attend because I'm taking care of myself, but I want to feel like I'm there. How do you make the event feel as real to the people who attend virtually as you are making it feel real for the people who attend in person? And then, of course, when you have your event, if you create safety protocols, what are you doing to ensure that those safety protocols are being followed? I think it's really important with any event that you have a planning team. And what's different about a hybrid event is that there's more planning, not less. And it's a different level of skill set. Like with an in-person event, you might be able to do a whole lot with volunteers. I wouldn't trust any of the technical stuff to a volunteer team. I would want to make sure that I had solid professionals working on all of the hybrid portions of the event. Maybe some of the ideating of like how to make that part more fun, but then the implementation should definitely, in my world, be handled by a pro. If folks have experience with using volunteers in that area, I'd love to hear it. Disabuse me of that assumption. But I think having a planning team helps you spread the work, but it will only let you spread the work so far. What's also important about a planning team is really make sure that people know what they're signing up for, and that folks are held, like volunteers need to be held accountable when they have things to do and they And that especially when you have deadlines and everything that are really important to follow. So I would make sure that folks know what they're signing up to do and are held to task, because if something falls down, somebody else, probably staff, will have to pick it up. So you need to make sure that you have good reporting requirements and just sort of clear lines uh, um, of reporting and or communicating, and you keep track of all of the things across all of the different people. So when you have a hybrid event, there's, of course, just like everything else, and this was specifically, folks asked for a lot of information on logistics at the first presentation. So we had a whole bunch of slides after this on logistics, but, there's things that you really have to consider. Of course, the theme, the time, the type of event, the date and location, all of these things happen. Like if you're going to do one event or the other, all of these things are going to come into play. But it's the marrying of these two types of events that you really have to think logistically about. Like, what are the tech concerns? It's not just like, do you have a fundraising webpage, or a donate or an event page, but it's how do they interact? What is different about this donation page versus the donation page that we have typically? Can we use the same one? Is it smart to use the same one? Like, you just have to sort of go through it on a different level. I've done big fancy galas where it was a whole paper world, where you sent the big fancy paper invitation and you did all of the things. With a hybrid event, you probably want to break out of that mold. You might probably want to do things slightly different. How would you do it differently? Because you're doing that as a hybrid. Whenever you add a technical component to something that used to be really analog before, like a paper invitation, you really have to think about the user experience and planning it out. So you got to really think about all of the different logistical pieces well in advance of the event, and then think about your two groups of audiences: the people who will be there in person and the people who are not going to be there, and what are the accommodations that you need to make. Like, what portions of the event can only be what portions of the event are only going to be accessible to people who are there live, and what portion of the event is for everyone, and what are the accommodations that you need to make sure that is really fun, not only for the people who are live, but also for the people who are not there. I'm a big fan of having an event page and something where, you get all your event information. Maybe there's like a side rail where you have like updates or people can leave messages, but the more interactive that you can make it, the better. But that's where you would also, it's like the one-stop shop of where you would be sharing all the information about the event, any updates or changes. It's pretty common that you might start promoting your event before you get all your keynote speakers locked in, for example. The event page can be one of the places where you keep all of that information nice and fresh. So if they're digging through their email to find out the info and they pull up the old email and it's like, that's not going to have the latest info, but the event page would, for example. I'm also a big fan of creating a social community, whether it's like a private Facebook group or whatever. But it is one way of creating a space where you can have your online people and your live people interact before the event and even during and after the event. It can also be a place where you just create like the annual space, and then you use it to like drum up return, like as you're planning next year's event, you can start talking about the next year's event. Some of the people who are just attendees this year might want to join the host committee or might be interested in helping with the peer-to-peer. But it's basically like, it is a community of people who attended your event. So they're ripe for the picking to come back to your next one. All right, so that's the quick run through. Our two guests, Emily and Kathy, have recently done their own hybrid events. Ultraviolet had Gender Justice for All, and Jobs with Justice had the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Awards, and full disclosure, I attended both. So I can tell you from personal experience that they were fab. But I'm gonna now. So I've sort of fed up. Fed up. What is wrong with me today? I've preloaded some questions so to maybe help the conversation get started. But what I would also like to do is, so these are the questions that I'm kind of putting out there, but I would also like to do is have our guest, I'm going to start with Kathy, please tell us about yourself as a professional fundraiser. Please tell us about tell us about the event that you had, a little bit about how many people attended, how did you handle the tickets and all of that? Like, just give us a quick run through, and then about you, your event, and then we'll flip the mic over to, then Emily can just jump in and talk. And then we'll just have a free for all conversation.
Great. Thanks, Polly. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Plate. I am the Managing Director of Growth and Member Experience at Ultraviolet. And fundraising is a more recent part of my job on the official side. I feel like it's been a part in some way, shape, or form for a long time. But I'm in charge of online fundraising at Ultraviolet, but of course also work with our development team sort of continuously, and was one of the people who helped to put on our recent event. I do think I'm very happy to share and answer questions about what we chose to do. I think we made some specific choices given the type of event that we were doing, our goals, and the basic also assumption that COVID is still out there, and we wanted to really take some precautions and be aware of that and careful about it. So this year actually marked Ultraviolet's 10th anniversary. We felt lucky that we were able to have a hybrid event. We thought for a minute it might need to stay just virtual. And we were really excited to have it because we had really looked forward to celebrating our 5th year anniversary, which would have been at the beginning of, why am I totally blanking on actual time, 2017. And we really thought at that time we would be able to have this whole narrative about how Ultraviolet started, and now we have a woman in the White House, and spoiler alert, that is not at all what happened, and we've decided not to have an event. Anyway, we don't need to rehash what happened in 2016 and 2017, but so for a very long time, we're like, you know what, we're just 10 years, it's going to be the big thing. And we felt lucky that 10 year did not fall during, when we were on literal lockdown around COVID. But like I said, we had a lot of internal discussions about what we wanted to do. We made it clear that we weren't going to require staff to attend, and for folks who were integral to the putting on the event, we wanted to make sure folks were on the same page about what risks they were comfortable with. We chose the way that it was hybrid was basically we had an in-person event in Washington, D.C. at an event space that had both an indoor and outdoor space. The hybrid part, I will admit we had hoped to do a little more with, but was primarily about live streaming one portion of the in-person event, which was an awards ceremony. And one of the ways that we made it sort of more special for folks who were virtual was that that part of the in-person event was invite only, mostly so we would have a crowd, but it was smaller so that it was if you really want to see this awards event, it is we primarily marketed it as the virtual part. And to also then I think the latter part of the in-person event, which was more of a party and less of a sort of official ceremony, wasn't okay, now live stream people, you can watch everyone just have a party. So it felt we're going to have the awards part on live stream, and then the rest was in person. Because we did it that way, we went back and forth on how we wanted to do revenue, how we wanted to do ticket sales, and ultimately ended up deciding we were going to focus on, for the fundraising aspect, with sponsors. Because Ultraviolet is pre-COVID, we've actually always been a virtual organization. We don't have a main headquarters. We haven't done a lot of in-person events before. So we felt it had been a long time since we were asking folks like vendors and other people and other orgs to like specifically give to one of our events, and that was a thing we could do, and that we didn't necessarily need ticket sales to be a big driver. So instead, we asked for donations, but we were not requiring donations for people to be able to attend the event. And like I said, there were lots of conversations. I'm sure, depending on your org and depending on the goal of the event, that might look different. Let me see what else I was gonna say. Oh, on the cover precautions, we ended up, like I said, the event space itself was indoor, outdoor. We did require folks to show proof of a negative test, and we did have like the rapid tests available for people to take. I will say pro tip, because this gave me like heart palpitations, is that one of our speakers somehow had missed the memo that we were going to do that, and so was like sitting at the picnic table taking their COVID test, and I was sitting there being like, please don't let this be the moment that they find out that they are positive after like having traveled for this. So like, if you are going to require testing, I do feel like suggesting people who are like need to be a part of the event test 24 hours before and not like right then, unless you're having the type of thing where you literally want people to be testing, that hour before. Although I don't know how that could be harder to implement. Anyways, Polly, was there anything specific you wanted me to add? Otherwise, I can like pause and let Emily talk and then do questions.
No, I think that's good for now. Let's
Okay.
switch to Emily and then we can just do the questions.
Sounds good.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm the development coordinator at Jobs with Justice. And for our event, we started planning for it about 6 months before. So our event was exactly 10 days ago. Just did the math in my head and wow. So yeah, we started planning for the event about 6 months before the event. At first, we weren't sure what type of event we were going to do. We have a planning team that consists of members from several different departments, mostly focused on our development department and our communications department. And we were having conversations about, would it make sense to do an in-person event? Should we keep it virtual? We previously, pre-pandemic, had only done in-person events. And the event we were doing is our annual award celebration, which had always been a fundraising event. And with COVID, we actually switched the award celebration. Instead of being a priority fundraising event, we decided to use that as more of a welcome to JWJ. Let's bring you into our organization and into the labor movement type of event. And so what we were really struggling with, which direction should we go with? And there's always, the proponents for in-person. It's much for development. You tend to hear the arguments of it's easier to fundraise, can always have better networking opportunities. So we heard a lot of that. For virtual, it will reach more people. We can expand our audience. We can bring more people in. So then the decision making actually left our event planning group and leadership made the decision that we should do a hybrid event. And so we were tasked with a hybrid event, which, as you all are aware, are essentially 2 events in one. We then were tasked with not only finding a venue, but a venue that could host any type of hybrid event. So could handle any type of live streaming, handle the tech component. And while most venues can do that, we also learned that some venues are just better equipped than others. Some have those options built into their rental packages versus some, those are additional costs. And We also, because we are a unionized nonprofit, we do have some specific standards that we have to follow. So whichever venue we go with, we have to make sure they are unionized or at minimum labor friendly. So there's just lots of constrictions that we were working with. And I should also explain that our event, I call it 4 events in one. So we have at the beginning a reception, then we go into our silent auction, which happens during the reception period. Then it switches to a seated program, which is our award celebration. And then it ends with a dessert reception post awards ceremony. So each part of the event program has to be planned out meticulously, because we also try to not make the event last too long, because these are a after work event outings. So we don't want to keep people there too late. And so when the addition of the live stream was added in, it was like adding in a 5th element to a already very complicated event. So it was definitely something that was difficult, but not unmanageable. We do also have lots of sub teams that we have for our planning committee that involves lots of other departments in the organization. So we have a communications sub team, which focuses on online communications, paper, social media, how we are essentially presenting the event to folks. We have a logistics team, which focuses on registration, vendor relations, anything that falls typically under logistics. Fundraising, which is sponsorship, just raising money. Host committee, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The program, which that is typically focused on, we script out most of the program ahead of time. And then we added in a tech sub team to focus in on that live stream part. We have an auction sub team as well, focusing on soliciting auction items and finding a auction software, because we do mobile bidding, and an outreach team. So the outreach team focuses on spreading the word about the award celebration. And so we have lots of different subcommittees, lots of different people, and lots of different departments helping us out. And just like Kathy, we get a lot of our, we don't necessarily sell a lot of tickets. We actually get a lot of our,
Here's your ticket slide.
so that's actually our live
Sorry.
pitch, or live donation
Sorry.
slides. So for our donations, what we do is we have a live pitch or a donation appeal in the middle of our program. And we have a donation thermometer. And so what we did do this year is, because we knew we were going to be doing a hybrid event, is we included a musical guest that both introduced the award celebration and then closed out the award celebration. That way it just didn't feel like your typical, oh, people are coming onto stage talking, and it felt a little bit more interactive. The same with the donation. We had this donation thermometer, so folks could see their names appear on the screen whenever they donated. They could see their donations were helping reach a goal. So we were trying to make the event as interactive and engaging as possible for the folks who were not physically there.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can just all sort of be in community together, and just sort of talk. So I'm curious about I guess I'm curious about, there was one thing that I remembered you telling me, Emily, um, about the program. So last time I did this presentation, as I mentioned, there were a lot more slides. One of the things that I said was like, one of the things that we've learned via Zoom is like, there's usually like a 45-minute fatigue that sets in. So programs, like you can do like a longer webinar, you can do a longer meeting, but people do start to get a little fatigued after 45, especially if it's not interactive, especially if it's just like folks talking. So I was really surprised when I got to your event and the program was so much longer, but you had told me something that night that I thought was really intriguing about you had planned for this. So can you talk a little bit about how you were aware of like how long your people could sit still for?
Yeah, so we always aim for like that 45 to an hour program. We never have hit that mark. But we've also done audience testing to see how long our audience will stay tuned and keep watching our online content. So we did this in 2020. We were originally supposed to do an in-person national conference, and because of COVID, we had to switch to a virtual conference. So that helped us figure out, okay, how long can folks stay in one session at a time? Then we started doing other like mini virtual series, workshops, webinars, and some larger virtual events, some smaller virtual events, and just sort of figured out what is the right balance between engagement, talking to or at a screen do we need in order to keep folks actually staying put, watching the content, and just being with us. And we got it down pretty good to the point where while we were doing the live stream, we had 200 people watching. So, and we had 200 people in person as well.
Oh, wow, that's great. Kathy, do you know what your numbers were for your live stream?
I'm trying to remember. I know it was quite a few thousand that it like reached, which doesn't necessarily mean people are like actually watching the whole thing. I want to say it was around a similar number of like, the people who actually stick through and watch and don't just do those first 3 seconds, which for us felt great, actually. And I will say, I really liked your comment about having a musical guest, and I feel like I want to steal that for next time, because we did have an issue where one of our speakers hadn't yet shown up when we were supposed to start, which like if we're in the room, people are like mingling, whatever, it's no big deal. But if you're like watching a screen, like how long do you want to wait? And like if people keep saying, oh, like, oh, it's going to be soon, there's like a different feel to it. So I feel like a lesson that I like wrote down for myself for afterwards was like either having something specific, like can you have a host for the live stream that like talks or entertains or does something, asks questions, whatever, before it actually starts, so people feel like they get more of a like either behind the scenes or more personal take, or having a musical guest or something that is going to start on time also sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, we also not specifically because this was virtual, but we wanted to take some additional labor off of our executive director. She usually was the MC for our award celebrations, but we brought in another MC, and she's just a local comedian, does improv. So by actually having her take over the role of host, if anything was going wrong, if one of the presenters was hung up somewhere, if we couldn't find one of the awardees, she would just improv and actually interact with folks within the audience. And she created skits. It was really good. It's another great way to just make it interactive, highlight some local folks in the area. And then she actually did a skit with our executive director where kind of poked fun at Starbucks and their anti-union campaigns. And try to include all of our other honorees in there as well.
Hey, Jen, you came on camera. I'm assuming that's because you wanted to jump in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. So, Kathy, for you, this is an event that was kind of like it's not an annual event. That's what you're saying, right? It's kind of more
Correct,
of a
yes.
one-off big event.
Yes.
And Emily, is this an annual event for you?
Yes.
I'm curious to hear about like how your numbers compared to last year. If you did this event virtually last year, for us, like I said, this was the third year that we did it virtually, and in 2020 we had like major tech issues. It was a complete kind of disaster. We had this like custom site built down, and then there was just the vendor we were working with didn't stress test it adequately, so it was kind of yeah, just the server was overwhelmed, so people couldn't actually like access the site that we had built down. So we had to send them a separate link to Vimeo, so they were watching the stream through that. But then last year was a huge success, and we had over 500 registrants. We had 350 people log on. We far surpassed our fundraising goal, and I think raised 354,000. Just a big success. And then comparing that to this year, I feel like it was a lot slower in terms of registration. It was harder to engage our leadership council. It just felt like it was a bit snoozier. There was less momentum. And I think that showed in the fundraising, and showed in kind of the attendee numbers. So I'm just curious, like, as we think about for us, this is an annual event that we intend to have, continue to have every year. And I'm just wondering, like, are people tired of virtual? And like, does this feel, in your opinions, like, does this feel like a sustainable kind of format to continue engaging folks? Obviously, like, I totally agree with everything that's been said here about the, virtual events being so much more accessible and lowering the barrier to entry, and, helping engage new and different supporters. But I'm just curious to get your thoughts on like what you see the future of a virtual event looking like, and hybrid for that matter as well.
Before folks answer, have you done a debrief? Do you have a guess as to why you think your numbers were different this year? Is there anything markedly different about the way that you promoted it, or the setup or the speakers?
It's tricky to say. I mean, we've done a number of debriefs and talked about this at length. And, we've been incrementally moving this event earlier. So it started typically in December. Last year we did November, early November. This year it was early October. And the thinking behind that is just kind of having a little bit of separation between like end of year fundraising time. And so I think that like really trying to build momentum with our leadership council in late summer, through the summer and in late summer, was maybe a little bit tricky, because it's just a slower period in general, hearing from them and engaging them, and we really rely on them to kind of like invite their networks. But then I think there were also, I don't know, in terms of like our outreach strategy, we went way harder this year. We really did. We put a lot more time and energy into thinking about our social approach and paid marketing, and setting folks up to really help them invite their networks. So I don't know, there's like it feels like there's a couple different variables, and it's like hard to know which one could have contributed. We also had, we've had like keynote speakers each year. And last year was Jane Fonda, and this year was a Nobel Peace Laureate, who is also just like a rock star, but maybe a little less well known. So maybe it was because of that. I'm not sure. So I don't know. There's like a lot of things, and it's kind of hard to like. There's also the elections, and I feel like a lot of our supporters were pretty actively involved in like that work, and so that could have played a role as well. I don't know.
Jen, can I ask, are you the one, you said that folks did like watch parties?
Mhm.
Can I ask, for folks who are hosting a watch party, what do they get? If anything.
So we put together like watch party boxes for them. So we had like Rise Up mugs and materials, brochures and annual reports and things like that. We had little like gift packages of like locally sourced products from female-owned companies. So because we're a gender equity organization, so we had like chocolates and little things like that. But we kind of framed it as like we have a gala planning committee, which was about 5 or 6 members of our leadership council, and it was primarily those folks who ended up organizing watch parties. So we kind of framed it as like a committee responsibility, and also like you're on our leadership council, and we hope that you'll kind of help us through this new format and kind of bring in new folks. And it was kind of an easy sell for the committee. Like there wasn't, they were really happy to host and to kind of plan and take the initiative. But it wasn't as if we were like, providing catering and a photographer and like all those types of things. It was pretty low key.
So what do you all think about her first question? And anyone in the group, not just Emily and Kathy, but what do you think about her first question about like, do y'all see hybrid events as continuing to be necessary or a thing? A lot of stuff that I'm read, it's like, if you're not doing hybrid events, this is, you have to start figuring out how to do it because people like this. I'm not sure. So both of you guys, Kathy and Emily, yours was streamed on social media, right? Both of you? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyone could access the streaming?
Yes.
Yes. Technically, yes. I will say one of the reasons, Jen, I was asking about like what folks got is that the box like you were describing is something that in our planning stages, when we thought we might do a purely virtual, we wanted to do something more like that. And then when we decided we were doing hybrid, we felt like we as a team didn't have capacity to both put on, and I think Kelly knows what was kind of a 2-part in-person plus virtual, and do those boxes for people. In like an ideal world, that would have been great to do. And one thing I'll say is I don't know if you all work with different vendors or contractors on planning for either the in-person or virtual, but I do feel like we were debating which like team to go with to help us, and the team that we went with, I think, edged out because we were kind of decided to put more effort, I think, and time and money into the in-person eventually. And that I think they had more expertise. I will admit the person I was rooting for, I thought had some better takes on hybrid. And so I will say like who you work with and like, have they been able to kind of like uncrack this and like, do they feel like they really have a lot of success with hybrid? I think is like a really important starting question, right? Because like you don't want to find out once you're working with someone and they say that they can do hybrid or that they can help with virtual, that like they just do a little or they actually contract it out or whatever, versus it being like core to how they think of their events. And for me, I would like it to be a little bit different if we do it again. Because it's not an annual event, but it might become one. I don't know. We need to decide. We made that a January conversation after the election, after end of year for our team. But yeah, I do feel like, I think without a little extra something, like just watching live stream, unless you have like a really good name draw or music or like something, I think there is definitely some level of fatigue people are feeling. And at the same time, I think there's an accessibility point and a lot of other reasons for us to continue to do virtual and hybrid. So I think it's tricky right now, for sure.
Yeah, I think for the hybrid virtual in-person question, it's really dependent on your organization and what your audience is used to and what they're expecting from you. So for us, there's a clear expectation of hybrid. And if we started just doing completely virtual events and had no hybrid options, I don't think we would have the same turnout, or we would raise the same amount of money. But so I don't think there can be like a blanket statement of organizations should do hybrid events, because each organization has a different donor base, different audience, and each one is going to respond differently. I was wondering, Jen, for your event, do you have sponsorships, or do you have sponsors? And could you interact with your sponsors, maybe have them try to plan some watch parties, or is that something that you guys considered?
Yeah, definitely. We do have sponsors, and that was something that we pitched to our corporate sponsors. But no one took us up on it. It's not, I think it was tricky because some of them aren't working in person fully back at the office. And so it was kind of like figuring out how we would, I just think like maybe pre-pandemic, that type of a setup might have made sense if the event was virtual. But I think because like sponsors were just, it was very varied in terms of like who was at home and who was in the office and who could gather and felt comfortable gathering safely. So yeah, there's definitely potential there that I would hope that we would explore next year again.
Yeah, what we ended up doing with our sponsors is we told them that if they had any friends like outside of their organization that they wanted to bring in, either watch virtually or bring into the in-person event. That way they didn't feel so restricted to just bringing in folks within their own organization. Sometimes they feel like folks get so stuck on, oh, it's a company sponsorship, so I should only bring folks from the company. So to me, sometimes you just have to say, oh, these are comp tickets, bring whoever you would like, and kind of nudge them a little bit. And then all of a sudden doors open and you could have so many watch parties at that point, you may not know what to do.
That's a good idea. I appreciate that.
I mean, honestly, when I've done galas in the past, like sometimes getting those sponsors to fill those tables are the hardest part, like begging them, just give us names, or, like, which is why I would always just say like, hey, if you're not going to use your table, let us know in advance and we'll fill the table for you. And also it'll change the deductibility of your your sponsorship. And, and I would try to have that conversation early on. Of course, we want the people, because it's like a lot of the groups that I worked with had like law firm focuses. So even the associates are making $240K a year. Like I want that kid in the seat. I don't need to be a partner to be an important, like a good potential, connect for us. Like someone who will be a fan for a long time that's got a great job. I'll take it. But sometimes it's just gonna be really hard to get those names. And I'm torn about the question about whether hybrids are here to stay. Like I do think there is some, like, one of the things I like about events is it creates community around your mission, right? You get to build friendships around it. Like I've made friends because of events that I still have today that were from years ago, and it was, like just happenstance, but, already, you got something in common because you're both celebrating this organization, right? So I like the opportunity for like having it run live stream on social, because then you don't know whose eyeballs you might catch, who might become part of community, and that may, become a donor, or may become an activist, or may become something else to you in your organization. So there's a part of me that's like, there is a benefit to having, some part of the event go virtual. But you've really got to do the cost benefit analysis, and you don't want to half-ass it so that it just feels like, all right, we're going to turn the camera on now. We're going to turn the camera on to the part of the event that everybody hates, which is the talking head program part. So I try to spend a lot of time with making sure my program is well choreographed, scripted. If my speakers are speaking, I try to get their speech in advance. I try to do all the things. And I think for a hybrid, I would do, I haven't done one, but things that I have been thought of, I was thinking about, if I was in the chair, is I would probably try to do some way to cross the plane, like meaning one of the awardees, one of the people who is speaking is someone who's joining virtually. So that way there's the spotlight goes onto the screen, and that everybody's looking at everyone else. I would also make sure that there was video components to it that were tight, so that there was it felt a little bit more, rather than like a Zoom meeting or like the big Brave on screen happening, that it felt like I'm watching a YouTube video, or a clip, like just to break the monotony for the person sitting in the chair. Just like video breaks up the monotony for the people sitting in the chairs at the event. I mean, just one talking head after another can be really painful. And that's why I really liked, Emily, that you guys did the musical thing and the comedian. I thought that was there's always like nervousness when you invite an improv person or a comedian to do off the cuff stuff, because you're like, please God, don't let this go wrong. But it can really, even if only a few people laugh, laughter is, contagious. So it'll pick up. I'm gonna also nudge Jordan and Rafaela to see if they have any questions, if they want to jump in the conversation too. They could be off mic and off camera for a reason, though.
I'll do a time filler while we wait, which is to say, on the making the virtual more interesting, I do think having somebody, this is kind of like, if having the programming more tailored could be trickier. Having someone either on your staff or a volunteer active in the chat is helpful, so that people can like engage and feel like they're able to have a little bit of that connection, I think can be really helpful. And I will also give a little shout out. We used ActTV to help us do our live stream, and I do recommend them. I think they're both really professional and great at the actual tech side and the doing the streaming. And depending on how great your networks are, they have their own pages where they cross post, and people obviously, like, if you follow them, it's because you like to see those live stream events. And they also have a lot of connections with various organizations who might be willing to, do a cross posting of your live stream, and you can reach a wider audience that way too.
Would you mind repeating the name of that?
It's called ActTV, and I'll put it in I'll find them and put a link.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I know they're in DC, but I believe they have other locations too. I think I've actually used them outside DC. So
Yeah, I was going to say there's nothing worse than attending an event and the live stream is constantly buffering and choppy.
Yeah. They also we could have done it in-house, but they were willing to, they put special graphics together. So when the speakers were talking on the stage, instead of, hoping people catch, they had little, kind of like if you were watching CNN or whatever, the lower bar,
the Chiron thing,
their name and their title and stuff. And they had different graphics for transitions and different things that they produced, so that we didn't have to do it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I do recommend them.
So what are the questions that folks have, or what are the concerns or troubles that y'all run across in planning these things? Is more that you want to dish on your events?
I
I would say with our organization, our donor base tends to skew a little bit older.
Mhm.
And because of that, many of them are not terribly enthusiastic about the idea of involving technology. But at the same time, this is also a population that we're trying to accommodate when we talk about COVID precautions. So that sometimes makes things a little bit more tricky.
Do you have an event already that you do?
So we did an event earlier in the spring, and it was sort of a conversation with different filmmakers that highlight gender justice. So we're a sexual reproductive rights and health organization, and one of our board members is actually Ryan Hawk, and she served as a moderator, and we involved several women filmmakers, and they sort of talked about their work and some of the challenges that they encounter. That was an event that we secured some partnerships. And overall, I would say that it was well attended, but we have made the decision that we will probably not be doing. Oh, I'm so glad that you did, Jen. But we are not entirely sure if we're going to be doing it the same way next year. And we also will soon be having an event with some of our major, be having a session for major donors as well as a session for some new donors. And it's basically we call it Tea with Tracy because our CEO, Tracy Baird, and it's basically just a conversation between her and one of our in-country leaders, and just sort of chatting about family planning in Tanzania and the way that oftentimes goes, just for people who are more interested in our program work. So for us, it's more of almost an educational kind of event rather than a gala or a celebration or award ceremony.
And the
But that
event,
could change. We're a relatively new team. Our director just started in August. I started in late April. So it's an exciting time. We're definitely still figuring out what our plan is going to be and what we're going to be doing moving forward.
it would seem that those types of events would go well either way.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there is an interest. It's just finding the right way to market it and get people involved. And we're also in the process of trying to reach out to and engage younger donors. Not that we don't want to still be serving our older donors, but we're just very aware of the fact that there's a gap there and we want to make sure that we are reaching everyone. We're currently reaching out to different professional societies within like public health programs at different colleges and universities and trying to see if there would be interest there.
Makes sense. Anybody have tips or ideas for her, or anybody want to share any other thoughts or questions?
I will take all the tips.
Sorry, Jordan, this is not a tip, but more of a question. The group, just curious, what types of like marketing outreach strategies you all used, what you found effective. Yeah, it'd be really helpful to hear.
I can start. I think I will say, and I'll try to go short because I think I mentioned we ended up having the in-person be like primarily invite only, and then did some like kind of last minute marketing when we realized we still had some space. We did mostly social media and email promotion of the virtual event itself. We did not do any paid promotion. I think if we had structured it a little differently, it had been on the table at beginning stages of planning, and then given how we ended up structuring it, decided not to do that. But I think I could see that being something that could potentially work. Yeah, we primarily did like inside of our own network that, had a email promotional plan and social, and that was like really what we stuck to for ours. But I don't know, Emily, if you have thoughts and if you all had a bigger plan than we did.
Yeah, what we did is we also did the social media and email promotions. Then what we did is we did a mapping exercise with our outreach sub team, and basically we listed out all the organizations that these are the organizations we would like to see at the event. And then what we did is we just started brain dumping every single person that we knew from those organizations. And then we just started emailing anyone we knew from those organizations. And if they were sponsors, we were emailing those folks with sponsorship codes, how many comp tickets they had, making sure they knew and were aware of what of the event, that they had access to it. And the idea was sometimes specifically with sponsorships, the sponsorships can get kind of stuck at a high level at a company or an organization, and that information doesn't always go down to some of the lower level employees. So we were trying to really target just about every single person in the organization, make sure everyone knew, because some of the comp tickets that sponsors had were 50 to 75 comp tickets. So we really wanted to make sure seats were filled, eyeballs were on the screen, and that really all the comp tickets were being used. So, and then we actually got in, I think, 2 or 3 other sponsorships through this outreach team by just reaching out to folks. And these were people and organizations that our other various department directors had relationships with. And just because of that personal outreach, someone from the organization said, "Oh, because you thought of me, let me boost this up to my finance director and see, can we chip in $1,000 for a sponsorship?" And that actually ended up happening a lot more specifically with nonprofits. So it was this little outreach team that sort of came up as a little idea that I had. So I didn't have to reach out to so many people, turned into this really cool mix of folks that we ended up getting over 300 people registered for the event because of it.
That's awesome.
You know, I'm thinking about Kathy, what you posted in the chat about the cross promotion plan, and I wonder if that would be a nice tactic for like Jordan to use. Can you talk a little bit about that as a way to like also get content in front of a more broader and diverse audience that might not, know your organization yet?
Yeah, so I don't know how much folks on here know on social how it works, but for Facebook, you can have like a cross-promotional relationship between pages, and it's something you need to set up in advance. It's like on the back end of Facebook. So just as for instance, like we can send a request to Women's March to say, hey, can you allow our page to do a live video to your page's audience? And then they have to go into the back end and hit agree. And there's actually like a couple different versions. There's one where like, then we can just do that. And then there's one where Women's March says, sure, but we want to be able to click like, yes, we're going to allow this to happen like more in real time. Depending on a relationship that you have with different orgs, they might be open to different things. But then, especially if they do the one that just lets you do it, once you go live, you'll go up, your stream will go up on all of those pages. And so you get the audience from the other pages in addition to yours. And it is super helpful in reaching a wider audience. And, especially for folks who like either are really allied with you or are your sponsors, going up on their page is great. I know for us, one of our awardees, I'm totally blanking on the name of the org currently. It doesn't matter. Their organization was really excited that it was really easy for them to be able to just share it, and like literally they could just accept the request and not need to have their social person do something. So I think it takes in some ways some advanced planning, but it doesn't take a whole lot. And then you also have that relationship. So for future, obviously you can post their stuff. And for other events you have that may or may not be fundraising, like, you're going to do a live that's a little more educational, or a protest or a march or petition delivery or whatever, then you already have that relationship set up.
Cool. How many groups did you do that with?
I forget. We had like a list that we at UV reached out to, and then Act TV had their own list of like orgs they had worked with, but that they thought might be open, but we didn't have as close of a relationship with. And so I forget what the total ended up being, but maybe like 20 different orgs.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
What else are on people's minds? Or are you all hybrid evented out?
I'm very excited to learn about the reaching out to the audiences of different organizations through Facebook. I actually did not know that was possible, but I will definitely be talking to our comms team ASAP to learn more about our options for that.
Let me see if I can find you a link.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as like all the, there's so many different social media platforms, and they bring, different things to forward. And of course, there's all the questions about like, do you want to participate in them because of who owns them? Either, for so many of them, not just the latest craziness. But it's like the value, to me, the value in being able to do like really using coalition partnerships, really using, partners in a way that like you can demonstrably like benefit each other in this really sort of meaningful way. I think that, that's just great. And that's not something that existed before. And especially if you have the opportunity to give back, if they're doing something too, and you can be like, we'll hook you up. You helped us out.
Especially, I feel like on social, there's a never-ending need for content. So being able to share from other folks is great too.
Yeah. And it just sort of goes to show that there's so much more depth in each one of these platforms than I think many of us are using. And it can be scary, but knowing that like you did this thing now means like, I wouldn't be so afraid to go check it out because I know somebody who used it really effectively already. Anybody else got any like crazy little tips like that are mind blowing that we want to throw out there?
One thing I had made a note for myself to share, and I think this might be sort of related to Jen, the way you all have done events, but something that happened as sort of a hybrid event actually that came up pre-COVID, and I think it looks a little different now. I used to work at the National LGBTQ Task Force, and something they do, I think they are still doing it. They took a little pause, but that they at least used to do every year in LA. Their main offices are in DC. They call it Night of 100 Dinners. There aren't always 100, spoiler alert, but they call it Night of 100 Dinners. That's sort of the goal. And the way it works is you have like small dinner parties at a bunch of different homes, different hosts, so that the like level that people need to do is lowered. And then at the end of the night, everyone can go to an in-person like dessert party. So like you're not needing to feed everyone dinner, and it's like way more casual, and there's usually booze and an ask. And it's very fun. And I feel like I'm not 100% sure how they did it last year. But I feel like you could do that in a literal hybrid way of like, it kind of feels safer to be a small dinner party. And if you don't want to go to the big event, that's fine. Or instead of a big event, maybe it's everyone does their thing for an hour and then you all hop on Zoom, or whoever's at the main thing is on Zoom. But it's a really cool model that I think sounds a little bit like what you all did, Jen. What I liked about it is, I know hosts all got something, but kind of part of the fun, as I remember in conversation, had been around like a lot of the folks who were hosts would cook or sometimes get takeout from their favorite place, and like talking about like what fun thing people did was really kind of a part of the culture of the event that made it more fun than like, I think we all know the like classic, you go to the ballroom and it's like kind of the not great chicken or the like not exciting vegan option, you know, like like and I think part of it is logistically challenging, I know, but it was like, this is the vegan house, this is the like this type of house, this house is going to have the like catered whatever, it's easier to throw, you know, we're going to send the staffer to this party because the stoner is going to be there, like whatever, and kind of mixed it up. Anyway, I really liked their model, and I think it was a fun way to do things that kind of applies, I think, to this hybrid model too.
I attended one once, and I also did one. I attended one that was a similar thing that Women's Information Network, I think it was, did. That was sort of the same model, and I totally think that that's hybrid, like ready, where because basically, I mean, it is that thing. It's like it is based on the small house party. Everybody's got a due date, you know, so you don't have to like, for example, like chase down board members to be like, when are you going to host that thing? You can be like, no, you're going to host your thing on this day. And then, you know, it's sort of built up nice where you could do like a great gift basket where like, you know, where you send the dessert and maybe a couple bottles of wine or something. And then at, you know, 8 p.m., everyone turns on their screen, their TV or laptop or whatever, and joins the celebratory moment, but they don't ever have to leave the home. They're, you know, like instead of the live event where everybody satellites in and feels disconnected, the live event is actually the smaller thing, and the program is what's beamed in for, you know, it sort of, it puts it a little bit on its head, but also you can create this opportunity to do this, you know, like this fun thing. Like one of the things that I know of a friend's organization did was they recreated the swag bag too. So like, you know, you could do the gift basket that makes it part of the meal, or what they did was they recreated the swag bag, but they made that into a swag box, and the people got, you know, like not, you know, like not everybody who signed up for the virtual event got the swag box, but like if you paid the, you know, ticket at a certain threshold, that's how they knew how many swag boxes to make. Then you got a swag box. So you still got your koozie from the pharma company and your thing from something else. But there was also like, you know, leave behinds from the organization and some branded merchandise from the organization too. And cookies. And I think they put like a coffee thing and a tea thing, and, you know, just something that they could partake in for the night, which I thought was a great idea, because like some of the things that the sponsors really care about is, well, how do I get great? I get my logo on your page, but I really wanted to hand out this lanyard, you know? Or, you know, I have my J mug is over there. Or the mug, or my, you know, or the thermos, whatever. But yeah, I thought that was a really neat thing. And they just sort of built it into the process of like, sponsors are used to doing this thing. Let's make this thing still happen. And it gives the people who are, you know, who are attending, definitely, like, who are ticket buyers, get some of the benefit if they didn't come to the live part.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Seems, yeah, so much potential there. For us, this event has always been a breakfast. So it takes place from 9 to 10 in the morning, which is kind of different. And I think for the watch party hosts this year, it was like maybe a little bit challenging in terms of timing, getting folks to like come over for a watch party event. But I think what ended up happening was that they came a little bit before 9. They had like breakfasty, snacky, you know, pastry type things, and then watched the 1 hour event, and then hung out afterwards and kind of did like, you know, debrief on the event and talked about it and stuff, and used our mugs to have like, you know, coffee and tea and stuff. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. We also had we had like a live like thermometer tracker on the event, and we had printed out for all watch parties like QR codes, so that guests at the watch party could be directly contributing to the event and kind of see their event donations come through, which seemed to work really pretty well. It's a weekday. It's a Thursday morning.
One idea I was going to share, I'll share it anyway, because it was something else I had wanted to do that we didn't get to do because of capacity, but I think would be fun, is to have someone kind of like a mixologist interact with your hosts for house parties, and have both a like mocktail. At our in-person event, we had a mocktail and a like signature cocktail that both had like edible glitter. They were very fun. But I feel like something like that where you get the kit of the non-alc, because I'm sure like, I know as nonprofits, like sending people alcohol is not always something we want to be doing. But you could possibly send like particular mixers that would make like a mimosa fun, or like whatever the non-alcoholic version is that would be maybe like a little more exciting and make it more interactive. A little trickier on a Thursday. Could have someone do like a pour over demonstration of something that feels really geeky. Not quite fun.
One of the events that was really popular during COVID in my Facebook feed was there were several DJs that I went to high school with, apparently, and they did like not every Saturday, like one a month, they would do like a DJ party, and people were dancing at home, and they started to also then do them as fundraisers. One in particular was like raising money for the servers of the restaurant that he used to DJ at. So it became like a thing. And then when we had, when COVID restrictions got lifted, he kept doing the parties. He did them at the restaurant. So he just set up a camera. So, you know, we still had the picture of him like DJing, but he put it more wide angles. So a little bit of the dance floor was also there. And so you could see people dancing. But if you're online, which I was watching, I didn't go out, you know, you would also see people in their home, like dancing in their seats, just like you did every other weekend. So even though it wasn't a nonprofit, he took this idea that he did, he continued it doing a fundraiser. When they went back live and things settled back down, he switched it from being a fundraiser for the servers. Not right away. He actually still had it be a fundraiser for the servers in the beginning, but then he just started to have like the people who attended every week throw out names of organizations that they would like it to benefit. And then they just started to do that. And he has like a virtual tip jar and stuff like that. So, you know, just a good Samaritan who, you know, keeps doing this thing. And I think they raised like $100, $200 or something, but I like the thinking, and I think good ideas can come from anywhere. And I really appreciate all the good ideas that came here today. And I really just thank you so much to both Kathy and Emily for being willing to join this ragtag group of folks at our Fundraising Friday. Thank you very much for participating in the conversation. It was a small group, but I really enjoyed hearing, you know, from you all, and just the conversation was really fun and informative. I look forward to seeing y'all next time around. So next Fundraising Friday is November 11th. We'll be talking reporting. Please get in touch with me about your reporting stuff. Y'all have a great Halloween. Have a great weekend. Have a great everything. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.